December 28th. And I found out when Shannon called me the next morning. But on the night of the 28th, not yet knowing that anything had happened, Ann and John Vitti were over at our house. And at one point, I told a story about Bowman in college. There was a girl in my dorm I wanted to ask out, only she was already dating some guy named Wilson. And I explained the situation to John, and he nodded, and in that distinctive brass instrument voice said, "Don't worry, pal, we're gonna make her forget all about Wee Willie Wilson." And I share that because, well, the fact that on what seemed a random evening, I bring up something John said 40 years ago indicates what a large presence he was in my life. And also, there's a lot of Bowman in that story. It's hilarious. He's talking like a wise guy in an old movie. And he was mocking up a friend, and his confidence was misplaced. I remember what John said much more clearly than I remember the girl. I appreciated the encouragement. I first met John in 1979 when I got on the Harvard Lampoon, and along with a bunch of people here, he quickly became one of the reasons I learned nothing in college and have never regretted it. Bowman was a truly unique character. I know you're not supposed to modify unique, so maybe I learned one thing in college, but in his case it applies. John always seemed like a man from another time, a throwback. He knew how to tie a bow tie. He was at home with things like brown liquor and cigars. And he actually used grill cream. And this made it look like he had a glistening snack cake on his noggin, which earned him the nickname, and say it with me if you know it, Fudgehead. Thank you. And also with you, thank you. That was a smattering of Fudgeheads. I thought that should be the collective name, like a cloud of cats. Okay. John also loved Snappy Pat. He was dating Shannon by then, and he talked a lot about pitching woo. He'd say, "No one can pitch woo like me." Well, all this was, of course, extremely infectious. And as the song goes, John didn't have to be so nice. Someone that fun and handsome and affable, we would have loved him anyway. But behind the considerable surface charm was a truly good person with a heart big enough for everyone. John and I were talking last year about how polarized the country had become, and Bowman said, "You know, I'm just going to enjoy everyone. All my friends, liberal, conservative, black, white, gay, straight, I'm just going to enjoy them all." And but John was always like that. He just knew life was too short to take sides. And doesn't mean he was above a little mischief. There was a venerable old tonsorial parlor in Harvard Square called La Flamme. And I guess JFK was a customer in the 30s. But by the late 70s, their specialty was terrible haircuts. John was aware of this. Algene and I weren't. And Bowman saw it as an opportunity for some fun. He took me and Al there and sat smirking behind a magazine while we were getting butchered. My haircut was merely awful. Poor Al's somehow came to a point. But as surely as hair grows back, I'm certain that John would never consciously hurt anyone. Now, that ethical sense was instilled during childhood, or maybe more accurately, it was pounded in during childhood. Years before I met his older brother, Bill, John told me once when he was a kid and got mouthy that Bill said, "You've always got a smart answer. Someday you're going to give a smart answer to a guy who's not as nice as me." And John said he'd walked around in fear ever since. Terrified of meeting that guy who's not as nice as Bill. But he overcame that enough to be the big man at his high school. He was class president and a football standout. His playing career was ended by a fairly serious injury attested by a long surgical scar along his back. But John was always happy to tell about the time he made a punishing tackle, and the local radio announcer said, "That Bowman is one mean dude." So John and Shannon got married in 1982 in Buffalo, and I met John's sister Sue and all four of his brothers. And having a full smattering of fudge heads, all looking and sounding and acting like Bowman, coming at you at once, like Cortez staring at the Pacific. It's a sight you never forget. And at the reception, I was chatting with John's older brother, Tom, and I mentioned John was a good football player. And Tom said, "Yeah, he was." And I said, "Well, he hurt his back." Tom instantly, "Hurt his back? The boy lost his nerve." So there was some humility forced onto John's natural self-confidence, and it all added up to a very balanced, even temperament, which was needed when Johnny and Courtney were born. By then, my wife and I were living across the street in Manhattan, and somehow their obstetrician had missed that Shannon was carrying twins. It's true. So they didn't find out until the day that there would be an extra baby going back to their tiny studio apartment. And John's reaction to this news was, "Oh, good. Nothing further." I noticed last week that Betty White had pretty much the same hairdo for 70 years. But for consistency, I think Bowman's disposition is right up there. Just a silly side note. I remember John and I looking at all the Brandon babies through the glass, and there was one as big as Johnny and Courtney combined. A bald guy with the last name Hack. And we decided maybe Hack was the grizzled boss of the maternity. Who'd warn the other babies about having smart answers. Well, around 1990, we both moved out here, and John had 3 more sons and tremendous professional success, and never stopped being useful as a Lampoon trustee and a Writers Guild negotiator, a junk professor at USC. And he also went to Mass every morning here at St. Monica's. He rode here on an electric scooter. And that's a good image of John, someone who always enjoyed life, even as he took it seriously. Over the last decade, Bowman and I got in the enjoyable habit of having lunch together several times a month. We trade off hosting at each other's clubs, which was fun to say, like we were PG Wodehouse characters. These would always run at least 2 hours, often more. We'd still be standing by our cars after gabbing in the parking lot. Our last lunch was in November. John gave me some advice, I remember, on how to be less annoying to my wife. Then he went to Buffalo for a while, saw a Bills Patriots game, then back in LA he caught a cold. And I'd like to finish by just sharing some of our recent texts. On December 15th, I wrote, "Get well soon, I want to talk Packers." A couple of days after, I ran into Shannon at the grocery store and I learned the wonderful news that Courtney was pregnant. And I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter. I spent a lot of time telling John how great it is and how much I wish that for him. So I sent him congrats. He texted back, "Merry Christmas. You and I are going to grandparent the hell out of this. Let's have lunch next week." I replied, "You got it bad." Let me explain. Joe Biden gave an impassioned speech recently looking toward the 2022 elections where he said, "I want to tell my Republican friends, get ready, pal, you're getting in for a problem." And John and I weren't looking to mock the president. We were just tickled by the idea of, building to your applause line and then botching it. It could happen to anyone. So we called each other Mal for a while. It was just another shared joke, like Wee Willie Wilson or Baby Hack. On the morning of his last day, John texted me, "How about that lunch?" And I'm really upset we're not going to have it. Because there's a lot to discuss. He was the main person I talked to about sports, politics, comedy, family. I also wanted to sincerely thank him for the marital advice on how to not be annoying. And honey, please don't ask me what that was. You can't expect me to reveal my strategy. So it would have been a special lunch, but with John they all were. And I'm mostly upset we didn't get to toast him becoming a grandfather. And that part's almost too sad to talk about. I'll just say, I went over to the Bowman house the day after John passed, and Shannon and all the kids were there, and I was just amazed by how strong and hospitable they all were. As unlikely as it sounds, we laughed a bit. And I thought, this faith and graciousness and humor, it's all a gift from John. So he's here right now. And once you guys start making like Bowmans, he'll be there for his grandkids. Not how we wish, but his spirit will be a presence, a real one. So I'll finish, for real this time, with a quote from Edwin O'Connor's suitably Irish novel, The Last Hurrah. The ailing governor is in a hospital bed, saying it's likely a final goodbye to his staff, and he holds the handshake of one guy who's a jaunty cut-up and asks, how in the world do you thank a man for 1 million laughs? And when I first read that, I thought, oh, that's how I feel about John. And that was about 30 years ago. So, who knows what the numbers up to now. Excuse me. I cherish the laughs, and he was also the person I went to when I was having a tough time. Knowing John Bowman, being his friend, being close to him, has been one of the great blessings of my life. And being asked to speak today. One of the great honors. So, thank you, Sheena. I love you. We all did. We still do.